Welcome to What the World Needs Now with hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe. We hope you're able to leave feeling encouraged and ready for another day of changing lives in the field of education as we speak with inspirational teachers from across the nation and world about what keeps their spark lit.
On this episode, Whitney Green, a professional school counselor, helps us as teachers understand the struggles of crisis learning and the importance of keeping perspective through it all. Her A-plus karaoke skills and pure passion are guaranteed to keep you energized and motivated as you enter another week. Without any further ado, Whitney Green. All right. Hey, thanks for joining us, Whitney. We are so happy. We're so blessed to be with you. I've heard a lot about you from Tom, but for those listeners that are out there that don't know much about you, if you got an elevator with them, what's your pitch to them? Who are you? Where are you from? What's your story?
Oh my goodness, my elevator pitch. I wouldn't want to be in an elevator with me. No, I am Whitney Green. I'm coming to you from Maryland, just right into Baltimore City. I am a passionate educator. I've been a professional school counselor for 10 years now. I have no idea where that decade went. I am a fierce advocate for social emotional learning and mental health awareness. I am a loyal partner or teammate for anything we need to tackle. And I am a B minus karaoke singer. There's my pitch.
That's pretty decent. Josh, what kind of karaoke singer are you? Where would you put yourself?
Oh, so I sing with my kids in class and ask them if I could be on an American Idol, and they tell me yeah, but
there you go. That's good. They're brutally honest, so you know that's good feedback.
I'm giving myself a D plus.
Oh.
I'm not good.
You better practice.
My wife lets me know. She's more honest than the kids, so man. So you're good. I feel like later in the show we're gonna have to put on a song.
Now see, now that I said that, I'm gonna regret that I gave myself that high score. It was kind of like I can say it because I'm not gonna be called out. But I mean, careful what you wish for. I might be giving myself a B, but I might be coming to you with a D. You better be careful.
Well, Whitney, I've really enjoyed talking to you before we started recording, and now that we're friends on Facebook. But I gotta know, what got you into teaching? What inspired you to go into education?
Yeah, I think if anybody from my kindergarten through 12th grade career knew that I was still in education, it would be laughable. It would be shocking. Nobody would have expected me to pursue a career in education. And it was really, during my K-12 time, I was interested in everything else, everything outside of the classroom and the classwork. So the extracurriculars, the student government, the leadership roles, the sports teams, that was laughable as well. Drama productions, anything else that was relationship building, I was way more interested in. So, and then I'm a school counselor, so I'm not a teacher by the definition. And so I didn't even have school counselor in my building. So it wasn't like I had something to latch on to and say, that's what I aspired to be. Because that position didn't exist. It was coming about as I was coming through the system. So there were some schools that had something called guidance counselors, which is not an appropriate term anymore. The whole position is different. And so I didn't even have one of those in my building. So I really didn't know that this was going to be my path or where I ended up. Went through K-12, went to Washington College on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, got my degree in sociology. And it was there where I realized that my passion was for people and understanding relationships, how people relate to their cultures and their cultural definitions, how that defines their community, how, micro and macro, how they relate to their community, how their community affects them. And kind of in that, I realized I had this awesome excitement for it. And then I graduated and went, what do I do with it? What do I do with an undergrad degree from a liberal arts college in sociology? And I ended up kind of parlaying that into a master's of education in K-12 school counseling. So I went back very specifically. I jumped over the teaching in the classroom, just skipped that phase that so many people do before becoming a school counselor, and just went right to the school counseling world.
That's awesome. That's really, really Really awesome. And it's needed. Like, we need great school counselors. We need school counselors that are passionate and really understand the intricacies of the social emotional learning that goes on in a day-to-day school, right?
Yes.
Um, and I love your passion. It just comes through the screen. It's amazing. But has there ever been a time, and I know this is really unprecedented what we're going through right now with COVID and remote learning, and Josh has a really great term, and I forget what it is right now.
Crisis learning.
Crisis learning,
I was
right?
gonna say, it's so great it's forgettable.
Right. No, no. Oh, I'm getting old, but
Teasing, I'm teasing.
so this crisis learning that we're going through, has there ever been a time in your career where you've really like just lost that spark or that passion's kind of dwindled?
Yeah, and I think I do love that term, that crisis teaching, crisis learning. And I think that for me in my area, my district, that was our reality from March to June of last school year. We left school one day and then we didn't come back. And that was completely unprecedented, as you said, and wild. And all of a sudden we had families and communities and children looking to us for answers, and we didn't have them either. We had no more information than they had. And so that was definitely a time where, for me personally, I struggled to know my role and to really feel the same passion for my role, because I had to re-navigate it. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know how I was going to reach my students in the same way, and I didn't know how I was going to have access to my families and support them. I carry so many of my students home with me in my mind and my heart, all of them. And when I don't have that same check-ins, that physical check-in every day to know they're okay, to check in on that well-being. A kid can tell you they're fine, but you can read it if they're not, you can see it. When I didn't have that, I kind of felt like I was having crisis inside of me, existential crisis, I guess. And so that was a really hard time for me. Right now, my school, we've stayed 100% virtual. We are maintaining that for the remainder of this year. So we started a new year, not feeling so much crisis teaching, but I feel like we really have embraced that distance learning and that distance teaching. We're kind of in our groove and we're doing that. But for me, when I look at keeping that spark, or where does it come from, and maintaining it, I think of inspiration as kind of a two-part piece for me. It encompasses two different things, kind of a marriage or a partnership. And inspiration for me is one part needing that reassurance. I need to know that what I'm doing is impactful. I need to stay purposeful, know that my work is purposeful, that it might have a lasting capacity in some way. And that is, again, that existential thinking, right? Like my role and my purpose, but I need that reassurance of those things. And the other part of my inspiration is that motivation piece, and kind of figuring out ways that I can continually challenge myself to do more, to do it differently, to ask the hard questions, to ask myself, what's next? What are you going to do next? And so those would be kind of when all this hit and everything was going on, those would be my two kind of areas of my existential thinking and my energy kind of married together to keep that inspiration going.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of educators that would feel that same way. There's a lot of doubt, a lot of questioning going on, I think, in education as a whole. So I think that's what it is. Thanks for being vulnerable with us and sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. Well, and then there are things that you can do to find that, right? So even though the entire world literally got turned upside down, you kind of had to figure out ways to answer those, for me, those existential questions, or to find that motivation. And in part, a lot of that's reflection. Years ago, I started just like a journal where, kids say the darndest things. So I would write down these one-liners that either had me just in stitches laughing, or that one that, like, oh my God, hit you right in the gut and the heartstrings. And I write them down. And so those moments when I was feeling that kind of crisis, and that, where am I, and how do I do this? And how do I navigate something I don't know where I'm going for a whole community in my school building? I would go back to that journal and that notebook, and I would read these incredible lines. And this is going back 10 years of what these kiddos that I've worked with have said to me or said about me, or messages, emails from parents, just kind of like an ego stroke book. Really? If I'm being totally honest about it. But it answered those like existential, purposeful, why am I doing this? How do I keep doing this? And it kind of got you back to the why. And then, that was an important part for me. Kind of purposely grabbing that mug. We all get mugs as teachers. Grabbing that mug and being like, which student gave me this? And really purposely thinking about, where is he or she now? Kind of having that intentional thought in that moment. Those kind of help to keep that inspiration.
sometimes.
That's awesome. Tom and I tried to get this trend going about reminding teachers when their spark's low, what's your why? And you're doing that. You're remembering your why every moment that you're doing your job. So, man, good for you. That's hard sometimes when you're feeling down to grab something that you can look at, something that you can feel and remember why you're doing what you're doing when it's hard. So hats off to you for that.
Okay.
You know, you talked about how you keep your inspiration going. And I think sometimes as teachers, when we talk to one another, we remember that we're all going through this lull. And I'm going to go off script a little, so this might catch you off guard. How do we get kids to find that inspiration? Because as adults, we've got that social and emotional maturity. How do we help kids when they're not with us? How do we help them to feel that love for learning, that love for school?
Well, I think, gosh, you did hit me with the hard hitters. Man, no preparation. I think, no. I think the first thing is that honesty with yourself, right? To say, I've had self-doubt. I'm going through this. I've had questions, and that we've been forced into a moment of redefinition and learning. What does it mean for me as a learner? What does that look like? What does it mean for me as an educator? How do I re-navigate what this is going to look like? And so part of why we have that lack of the answer is because we don't focus enough, in my opinion, on that vocabulary, on understanding what that is. We have, starting in kindergarten, right? We've got spelling tests and sight words, and you graduate to like vocabulary definitions, but we don't sit down and talk about emotional vocabulary and emotional words. And I think when you start to build that capacity, when you prioritize their ability to express themselves, then you've empowered them to understand and reclaim that. Because if we don't know what's going on, right? We have this body sensation, and now I'm having this big emotion, and everything's feeling chaotic, and I feel lost in the sauce, and I have no way of navigating this, so I shut down because I don't know the first step to take, so I'm not going to take one. That's our first hindrance, right? That all of a sudden we're losing them. We're losing that child. We're losing that adult. So you focus in on that, building that toolbox of vocabulary. When I can identify, I'm feeling angry. Okay, that might be a first word, mad or angry early on, but we continue to grow that. And I'm saying, actually, I'm not angry. I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling let down by an outcome. It may look like anger, but it feels very differently. And if I don't know those nuances of difference, if I don't know those details of what I'm actually feeling, then I'm going to put in the wrong reaction, or I'm going to attempt the wrong solution. And so when you go back and you say, we're going to have emotional vocabulary as much of a priority as any other language that we use right now, you equip those kiddos to say, here's what I'm feeling. That's a valid emotion. I can claim it. When I label it, I claim it, I own it. It no longer owns me. I'm no longer lost with it. I'm owning it. It's my emotion. I named it. And once I've named it, then I can affect my own change. I'm empowered to put my own solution in. All of a sudden, I'm defining what this experience means for me. This experience is not defining me. And I think that keeps that flame of empowerment and spark. How's that?
That was awesome.
I think what you said is so true. And I think sometimes as teachers, as adults, we forget what it's like to have that experience of not to have the right vocabulary. I think there's some adults that really could do well to kind of learn the nuances as well, right? And, when we want a behavior in class, we model it. And when we want a student to respond a certain way, we model it. And I think sometimes that we rush through, like you said, to get to the vocab words, to get to the sight words, to get to the math problems. And we forget how powerful and necessary modeling disappointment to students in the middle of the class day, or modeling frustration because I didn't like an outcome of an email that got sent, or some, whatever it is, just modeling those emotions and naming them and owning them then is so powerful. So I think
And
that,
it can be done at home. Something as simple as, man, dinner didn't come out the way I wanted it to tonight, you know, but saying it and walking through that feeling process, how that feels that it didn't, and what am I doing right now, and how am I going to affect change, and just let that flow. Maybe it's just a calming strategy, or maybe I need an intervention, and this is what I'm going to have. I think it's really important, that modeling piece.
absolutely it is. Mm.
And
So
again, like you were saying, given those vocab words to kids so that they understand the differences between anger and frustration, between all these different emotions that humans feel
Right.
is so important.
Well, then, so you take that one step further, right? So you say now this child is able to identify the difference. So they're going to go through their own process. They're going to be able to affect their own change. They're going to feel empowered. But then that next step is they're going to be able to recognize that in somebody else, and they're going to offer empathy. So we're building that within the same thing, because they're going to say, hey, I know what you're going through. You may look really angry, but I think you might be let down or frustrated or disappointed or anxious. And try this instead. Or maybe I don't have a solution for you because it's going to feel different for you, but I can at least understand what you're processing right now.
that's so huge. That's so powerful. I think empathy is something that is severely lacking in society as a whole, or the lack of acknowledging that we can be empathetic, that we're supposed to be empathetic with people. I think that is just so necessary. So I love where you're going with that. I absolutely love that thought. That's amazing. So in your opinion, Whitney, what is the most important big rock facing educators today?
Oof. Okay, the big one, the big rock. So obviously the change and what took place, we were just thrown into absolute mayhem for a minute there. So aside from the obvious in that transition, I would say with that, all of a sudden, when we ended one school year, it was okay to kind of transition with those kiddos, because you had the bulk of you had most of the school year with them. Those relationships were formed. You're starting a whole new school year, at least we are, having never met these kids in person. Of course, we're in a school that you probably know some of the kids coming up, but for the most part, these kids are meeting their teacher virtually, and that's how they're starting their school year. And so I think that the first part is kind of a two-part answer. I guess I have a lot of two-part answers. I think the first part is how to establish, facilitate, and promote authentic relationships. I think that is a huge, huge challenge right now. Knowing that I'm there, saying my name, acknowledging me on screen is one thing, but there's still something that cannot be replicated than shared space. And shared virtual space just isn't going to be the same thing. And so trying to do that as a teacher to your students, but also students to students, and that social dynamic that we're really missing. When you were talking, Tom, about empathy, well, it's hard to do that when you just see a pixelated person as that person you're supposed to be empathizing with. We're almost all characters instead of real people right now. And that's really hard to kind of trick your brain into understanding that it is a real person on the other side. That screen and that lens, especially at the elementary level, can seem very misleading. I do the morning announcements every day in my school, and it's the recorded video that gets played in the classroom, the virtual classrooms. And when I pushed into the kindergarten classroom for the first time, mind you, kindergartners, so they've never met me in person. This is their first experience at our school. One kid said, "Oh my gosh, I am so excited that you're real." And I said, that I'm real? And he said, "Yes, I thought you were just a character on that morning show." And I realized these kids don't have authentic relationships with me because they don't know me, which is so different from if we were in the building and I would be opening the door to let each and every one in with a high five every day. So it's a very different kind of start, I guess. And then the other piece I would say that goes with that is our teachers got thrown in, and educators across, admin, teachers, support staff, to this new way of doing things with no necessary preparation. And that expectation didn't change. It was, we expect you to be your content area master and a great teacher, and now tech savvy. And then if we look even further on kind of how education's been going, our teachers and classroom staff, they are everything. When I was growing up, I remember the saying going around, and this might age me, Josh, it takes a village to raise a child. Right. And that was something that good. So that was just something that was said. I mean, there was a poster in my building. It takes the village. It was a village picture, and it was all the people, all the helping hands. And that was just something that was embraced, and it was felt, and it was a community effort. And I feel like now the village is the teacher. The village is that one person or maybe two people in a classroom with so many hats to wear and to be able to take them off and change them in a millisecond. And so I boil all this long-winded answer down to saying that I think the biggest rock that we're facing right now, and it's a very scary one for me, is compassion fatigue. And that's saying that my teachers, the ones that I've been blessed to work with for the last 10 years, have the biggest hearts in anybody that I've ever met in my life. To go into education is not for the faint of heart. So you do it with the biggest bleeding heart possible. And when your expectations are thrown at you and changed with an urgency in a millisecond, and you're dealing with a classroom of 27 to 35 kids, some with IEPs, some with 504s, some undiagnosed with a challenge that maybe they're facing, family issues at home that they're not talking about. You have to identify warning signs of abuse and neglect. You have all these things, and you have to worry about how they're performing academically. And nobody is surrounding you as a village like they once were. We're trying, but it's not the same expectation. And so with that, when you constantly are giving and giving and giving to your students, you burn out. And if you're, what's the expression? Like as an ATM, you can only take so many withdrawals before putting a deposit back in. And as a teacher, I see them as this constant withdrawal, right? Like they're constantly giving and giving and giving, or educators in general. My admin staff is the exact same way. And not enough pause to make sure we're having a deposit in some way. Sometimes you have to be your own deposit. You have to put your own money back in. But that fatigue is happening, and not recognizing what that feels like before it gets to a point of kind of doubt and stuck and a lack of satisfaction for the work that you're doing, and kind of how to get out of that seems very daunting.
You went pretty deep there.
I'm a counselor, y'all.
No. I mean, you hit me right in the heart. You're saying everything that probably everybody that's listening feels. So thank you for that. Thank you for your honesty and the way you said it. I got to go off script again then.
Oh, yeah.
Just based on everything that you're saying. So we're going through all of these things, and we're wearing all of these hats. What are ways that you would encourage teachers to deposit to themselves when we're feeling burnt out? Because that's a real thing in education now. I mean, we hear all the time that districts aren't getting the numbers of applications that they used to. So how do we keep good teachers in the field when nothing's going away, but all of these things are being added to our plate?
Absolutely.
What would your advice?
If I had that answer, I'd be famous and making a lot more money. No, I'm just kidding. And that long list of things I just rattled off quickly, that doesn't even include the roles you play in family and home, right? So I'm just thinking educationally and in the school building. I'm not even considering being a father, a mother, a sibling, a caregiver to somebody right now. It's a lot. So I think it goes back, I'm forgetting which one of you mentioned it earlier, but it goes back to your why. And it really, you got to hold on to that, and you got to go back and say, why did I go into this in the first place? And who do I want to be as this teacher or educator, or who am I doing this for? And in that, and the hows, the what and the how is the stuff that changes all the time. So you cannot build your foundation of identity on the what's and the hows you're going to do it, because that foundation is wobbly and it's constantly shifting, and they're throwing new tests at you and new strategies, and this is the new best practice, and you're like, oh my God, you're taking all the human of me out of this. I need to do the why I'm doing this, the who I am and who I'm doing it for. And I think when you start with that, then you have to get really honest with yourself and bravely adjust your expectations. Acknowledge that your limitations are a great point to know. Saying that I'm limited in this, or that's not my skill set, is not a weakness. It's actually a strength, because when you acknowledge your limitations, you then focus on your strengths, or you can pay some specific attention to those limitations, but you set those boundaries intentionally that I can't do that if I'm going to be my best self for my family and my students, and or whatever role I may have in the building. And it's a mind shift of what I am doing, not what I didn't do. Okay, I have a laundry list of 15 things I didn't do, but you know what? Those 2 things I did really well today, that's the lasting thing that my kids are going to remember. That's what they're going to care most about. That's why Whitney Green is going to years later be able to name her K to 12 teachers, not because of what they didn't do, because of what they did do and how they did show up for me. And so setting those boundaries and owning them and being authentic and true to yourself and saying, I just don't have that, is a great thing to do. It's a power move, honestly. I feel like so much when all of this is happening since March, we had this countrywide shift from what we've heard always, find a work-life balance, find a work-life balance, find a work-life balance. Now it became a life-work balance because I'm at home or I'm somewhere else and I've got to figure out what my life looks like and then balance work into the places that I can. So that's what I want everyone to hold on to when this does clear up and we do kind of get back to some sense of normalcy or this new normal. I hope we hold on to life-work balance instead of work-life balance, because that's when we're our most authentic selves and our best versions, to maintain that and say, you know what? Saying I cannot do something is not a weakness. It is a strength in saying, because I can't do that, look how much more I can do. Or when I say no to that, here's how many more things I can say yes to, and how much more impactful that yes is going to be over the 3 or 4 no's that I might have said along the way.
I love that idea of life-work balance. We're supposed to be who we are first and find a job or a vocation that fits into that. So I love the fact that you start with life and that whole aspect. I think that's really powerful if we can keep that in perspective,
We do.
Yeah. Hey, we have a few minutes left. Tell me, Whitney, what does the world need now? In the 60s, there was this marvelous song. What the world needs now is love. Sweet. Here's your karaoke song.
Yeah. She knows it. She knows it. I see it.
Needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing.
Yeah.
That there's just too little love. All right, is that like a B minus? No,
That's
B.
it. I'd give it a B plus.
A minus.
A minus.
A minus to just a solid A. You have it.
Wow. All right.
So what does the world need now? In the song, they have mountains, they have rivers, we have assessments, we have COVID. So what does the world need now, Whitney?
All right. So that question I knew was coming. That was one I could predict was headed my way. And so thinking about this and not being the first person that you've asked that question to, you guys set me up because y'all gave some really great answers before I got on. I mean, you guys already touched about empathy, inspiration. I think Lynn was talking about time. Paul was talking about solution-focused creativity. So I sat here and I was like, oh God, what else? What else does it need? But it actually hit me. And I really think that this encompasses why I do what I do and how I do it and the approach I take. And that is the world needs perspective. And I want to say that's my buzzword. And I want it to be a shift in perspective. We, for so long, as long as I can think back to my schooling, had this kind of innate competition going on that I have to be ranked in some way. The world is going to rank me on my abilities, on my skill sets, on whatever I demonstrate, I'm going to be ranked. And we lost this. If you could look at any other cultures, so much of it is rooted in this mentality of I win when we win, when we all win. There's no competition. It's not this, all of a sudden, your winning becomes a threat to mine. No, that is such an Americanized kind of thing that's going on right now where your definition of winning and success and accomplishment can be completely different from mine. And you're going to feel it differently than I do. And we're not even going for the same thing. So we're not in competition. And shifting that perspective to that community, that village, that community sense that we need to come back to humanity. And winning doesn't mean some great accolade or award, but winning is promoting a thirst for knowledge. You're winning if you have this unquenchable thirst to continually educate yourself and learn more and read more. I think Lynn calls herself a lifelong learner. That's an unquenchable thirst. That's winning. You're winning when you have that excitement for that creative solution focus that Paul was talking about. You're winning when you're empathetic and it's natural. You're winning when you can be inspired by a countless number of things just walking throughout your day. So my word is perspective. We need to go back, alter, shift, change our perspective. And with that, I think encompasses the other words, it encompasses the why, it encompasses the how. And I just want to get back to promoting humanity. If you look at everything that was going on this year between the conversations around the election, between our incredible, powerful Black Lives Matters movement, and you you have to go back and say, we all can win, and we need to change our perspective that we're not in competition. We're in support of each other, in collaboration.
I mean, we're pretty family friendly, but I kind of want to give you like a little hell yeah.
Okay, I'll take it.
What a great answer, man.
I love that.
Tom, that's my favorite question that you ask, because I just feel like once you ask and we listen, you just feel pumped for everything that the world can throw at you.
Man, I love it. Yeah, I think perspective, I just think that we do need perspective. Yeah. Hell, I'm with you. Hell yeah.
All right.
Hey, Whitney, thank you so much for taking some time and being with us. Like, this has been an absolute thrill. Josh and I wake up Wednesday mornings because we record on Tuesday nights, and we can't wait to get to school. And now I'm going to go to school and have some perspective.
Yeah. No, I thank you guys. This was so much fun. I loved getting to hear those that came before me on this. I love this opportunity and kind of bringing these important conversations into the poems, whether it's your phone, your laptop, whatever you're listening to, and just finding that inspiration. I've had it from all the others I've listened to before me. So I really thank you for this opportunity.
Cool.
Well, thank you. Thank you once again for being here with us, Whitney.
Absolutely. You guys take care.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thanks so much for tuning in this week.
Hopefully you're ready for another week of changing lives. We're so thankful and appreciative that you took time to listen to our guest, Whitney Green.
We hope you can find your life-work balance in whatever educational setting you find yourself in this year.
Hit up next week's episode to find out what the world needs now.